Overall, Spider-Man is one of the most popular Marvel superheroes, but just like any other character, there are many different versions of Spidey. Today, we're going to be talking about the Spider-Man we all know and love from the MCU and comparing him to Marvel's Spider-Man for the PlayStation 4. Before we begin, subscribe to CBR and ring that bell to join our notification squad so you never miss a video. Without further ado, here are some differences between the MCU Spider-Man and the PS4 Spider-Man.
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
Experience. When Spider-Man was first introduced to us back in 1962, he was a compelling character for many reasons. Most other superheroes of the time were adults, so having a hapless teen like Peter Parker being a hero was unheard of. But while it was a novel idea at the time, fans really reacted to the character and it helped make Spider-Man a success. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we generally see Peter Parker in the same way. Although he eventually gets more jaded after a couple of movies, we're used to seeing a relatively young and inexperienced web-slinger on the big screen, but in Marvel Spider-Man for PlayStation 4, we're dealing with a hero who has swung around the block quite a few times. Jacinda Chu is the art director for the game and claims players will control a Spider-Man who soars through the sky with a confidence which comes with years of experience. The game avoids the age-old trope of Peter Parker getting used to his powers and trying to figure out what he's capable of. It takes place 8 years after Parker was bitten by a radioactive spider, so he's had plenty of time behind the mask. The video game version will present a very different Spider-Man than we're used to seeing in the cinema.
Come on, people, let's stay together. Proceed up the steps and into the building.
Peter Parker. Of course, the bulk of the Spider-Man game is going to see you playing as the titular hero himself, but you can't have Spider-Man without Peter Parker, so he'll, of course, be incorporated into the game as well. So far, we've seen quite a few different actors play Peter Parker in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Of course, there's the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, then Andrew Garfield's rendition, and the latest, Tom Holland. In Spider-Man Homecoming, we see a young Peter Parker attending Midtown School of Science and Technology. Due to his age, inexperience, and the danger involved, he's told by Tony Stark that he isn't ready to be a full-time Avenger. In addition to fighting bad guys, we also see Parker fretting about the homecoming dance and doing average teenage things. But the Peter Parker you'll get to play in the video game is much different. As we mentioned earlier, he's not a novice to the superhero game at this point. In his normal life, Peter Parker has since graduated college and found a job, so obviously his daily life looks a lot different than the one we're used to seeing on the big screen. He's focused on getting his career started and making sure his bills get paid at this point in his life. Superhero Adulting 101.
Impressive!
Villains. Just like audiences love the character of Spider-Man, many adore his villain roster as well. In fact, a frequent criticism of the films is that they feature multiple versions of the same villain. How many times do we really need to see the Green Goblin at the expense of getting to experience a different character? We aren't saying we're disappointed to have seen Dr. Octopus, Sandman, Rhino, and many more in the live-action versions of the Spider-Man movies. We're just saying a little bit more of a variety wouldn't be a bad thing. That's a wish that came true in the PlayStation 4 version of Spider-Man. After all, there's going to be a ton of fighting in the game, and this means you'll need bad guys to fight up against. So who are we going to see Spidey face off against in the game? Fans of other Spider-Man video games and the comic books might be familiar with the character named Mr. Negative. Not only is Martin Lee new to the big screen, but he's relatively new to the franchise. He first debuted in The Amazing Spider-Man number 546. Comic book fans can look forward to seeing Kingpin, Mr. Negative, and many other villains in this game.
Felicia.
Catch me if you can.
Black Cat. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we're used to seeing Peter Parker's love interest be Mary Jane. While we love the character of Mary Jane, comic book fans know Spidey's love life often gets much more complex. One fantastic character is Felicia Hardy, also known as the Black Cat. We've been waiting to see her on the big screen for ages, as she was supposed to make an appearance in the movie Spider-Man 2, but it got scrapped. Fans were disappointed, but relieved to hear we would see Felicia Hardy in Spider-Man 4, but as we all know, that movie never ended up getting made after director Sam Raimi withdrew from the project. Finally, we got to see Hardy on the big screen in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, played by actress Felicity Jones. However, we never saw her become the Black Cat. This was supposed to happen later in the series, but as of yet, we haven't seen it. In the comics, Hardy is the daughter of a world-famous cat burglar who decided to follow in her father's footsteps. Depending on which issue we're talking about, Black Cat has been both a friend and enemy of Spider-Man, and from time to time, she's been a love interest as well. We've seen her in video games before, and fans can look forward to seeing her in this PlayStation 4 release.
Oh, they're in the middle of a heist. I could catch them all red-handed. This is awesome.
Fresh perspective. Each different actor has portrayed a slightly different version of Peter Parker. Tobey Maguire was cast in the 2002 Spider-Man movie, but it was a close call. The studio just didn't think he fit the profile of an action hero, and he was forced to undergo a ton of training for the role. But soon, we got to know the slightly introverted and downtrodden Peter Parker. When we saw Tom Holland appear in Spider-Man Homecoming, we saw a much more bright-eyed and cheerful Peter Parker. However, we're going to be seeing a different character in the video game. Although he's become adept at being a superhero, just like the rest of us, Peter Parker is still trying to keep his life together. In the movies, we saw him struggle to balance his love life with his extracurricular activities, and this will, of course, be a theme in the game as well. In the movies, we saw him try to master his powers and his dating life, but the dynamic in the game is different. Spider-Man knows how to stop the bad guys, but he has to reconcile this with struggling to get his bills paid and find time to date. It's definitely a new twist on the character, and we can't wait to see how it affects his personality and motivates his decisions in the game.
You're so selfish.
Stay with me, Max.
You set me up.
Production. It's no secret that superhero hype is at an all-time high. It seems audiences can't get enough of these Caped Crusaders, and Spider-Man was at the forefront of the movement. The 2002 Spider-Man movie starring Tobey Maguire is often credited with bringing superheroes into the mainstream. Sony Pictures made the insightful decision of purchasing the rights to the character, and it has definitely paid off. But a few years ago, in 2015, they opted to share the rights to Spider-Man with Disney and Marvel Studios. This is why Tom Holland's Spider-Man is now a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Basically, the people responsible for the Cinematic Spider-Man franchise are well known for cranking out superhero movies. However, the approach to creating Marvel's Spider-Man video game is a bit different. It was developed by Insomniac Games and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. If you're a video game fan, then you probably recognize the name Insomniac Games. They're responsible for much-loved games including Spyro, Ratchet & Clank, and Resistance. While this company has a ton of experience creating successful characters and games, Spider-Man is their first experience using a licensed character. The intention was to make an epic game that feels different than the MCU version of Spider-Man. It was a smart move on Sony's part to work with a company which has a history of being passionate about their characters.
What's up?
I gotta go. End call.
Hey.
I'll take those. Yoink.
Actors. As we mentioned previously, Spider-Man has been portrayed by 3 different actors in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're all familiar with Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland. However, none of them had anything to do with the Spider-Man video game. For this, we get to see a showcase of talents from Yuri Lowenthal. He's voiced many notable animated characters, including Sasuke Uchiha from Naruto and Genosuke from Afro Samurai. Lowenthal is also the voice of many video game characters, including the Prince from Prince of Persia and Alucard from Castlevania. Despite being a talented and prolific voice actor, Yuri Lowenthal was very nearly passed up for the part of Spider-Man. He had provided the voice for one of the lead characters in the game, Sunset Overdrive, which was also created by Insomniac Games. The company's worried having the same voiceover actor in two of their recently released games would be distracting for fans. However, the game's lead writer, John Paquette, advocated for hiring Lowenthal. He stated that because of his acting ability, the dual roles shouldn't be an issue. In addition to making sure he sounds different than his character from Sunset Overdrive, Lowenthal also tried to make Peter Parker and Spider-Man sound slightly different from one another. While they're not completely distinct, a lot of care was put into getting each voice just right.
You want me to come down there so you can kill me?
Yes!
I'll be right there.
There's no place like home.
The Sinister Six. The Sinister Six is one of those comic book elements fans have been teased with for a long time. It's a classic story of a group of villains deciding they would have better luck working together than individually. In the comics, they're called together by Dr. Octopus. The other members of the group are the Vulture, Electro, Kraven the Hunter, Mysterio, and Sandman. If you saw The Amazing Spider-Man 2, you probably noticed the heavy hints that some villains would be teaming up. The Sinister Six of the MCU was slated to be slightly different and included Rhino, Vulture, Kraven the Hunter, Dr. Octopus, Mysterio, and the Green Goblin. Marvel talked about releasing a Sinister Six movie for a while, but it was eventually canceled, and we've only now heard it's back in the works. But in the video game for PlayStation 4, the player will get to face off against the Sinister Six. In the game, the group is comprised of Dr. Octopus, Electro, Rhino, Scorpion, Vulture, and Mr. Negative. It's a slightly different grouping than we're used to, but we love seeing a group of bad guys trying to work with one another. It'll be nice to get a chance to see this group in the game before the inevitable movie starring the Sinister Six.
Who are you?
You know who I am.
I do?
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Mary Jane. In the comic books, Mary Jane Watson is one of Peter Parker's romantic partners. We saw her appear in the first 3 Spider-Man movies. Hapless Peter Parker admired her from afar, won her heart, rejected her, but was ultimately able to reconcile his relationship and his responsibilities. She was also set to appear in the movie The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and was going to be played by actress Shailene Woodley. However, the part ended up being cut, and the movie focused on Parker's relationship with Gwen Stacy instead. Still, fans haven't forgotten about Mary Jane Watson, and she remains a popular character in the franchise. Not only does she make an appearance in Marvel's Spider-Man game, but she's even a playable character. She's an important part of the storyline, according to game director Brian Intiher. He claims the character was designed to help provide balance to the life of Peter Parker. She also works as an investigative journalist, which helps move the plot of the game along. But don't worry, she isn't just a pretty plot device. Players can look forward to learning her backstory and seeing her stand out among the other characters. According to Intihar, the Mary Jane players will encounter is so much more than simply a damsel in distress. Needless to say, playing as Mary Jane will provide a very different and interesting contrast compared to playing as Spider-Man.
Mr. Stark, it smells like a new car in here!
Costume. Whenever we hear that a favorite comic book character is being adapted into another medium, we can't wait to find out what the costume looks like. In the new Spider-Man game for PlayStation 4, you can choose from tons of different costumes, and you'll be happy to know that there's a much greater variety compared to what we've seen so far in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In fact, these costumes will bring back lots of memories for fans of the comic books. For his daily wear, Spider-Man usually wears this advanced costume, but it's not made out of spandex. Instead, it's inspired by athletic wear and designed to look more realistic and functional compared to other costumes, but of course, there's also the less high-tech standard costume, which Peter wears at the beginning of the game. You can also don the dark costume, which harkens back to Spider-Man Deadpool number 8. There's also the Electro-insulated suit, which was designed to give Parker a serious edge when dealing with massive amounts of electricity and facing down Electro. You probably know that Thor's hammer is named Mjolnir, but do you know what it's made out of? The super strong substance Uru. It first featured in Fear Itself number 7, and although it was ultimately destroyed by Odin, it's one of the costume options in the video game. These costumes will definitely put your comic book knowledge to the test.
Kid, you're an Avenger now.
And there you have it. Have you played the new Spider-Man game yet? Is he your favorite superhero? Let us know in the comments section below. And don't forget to subscribe to CBR for more videos like this one. Thanks for watching.